Hello and welcome back to Richard Plays Games. My name is Richard and I play games. And welcome back to Planet Coaster. Welcome back to Avalon Studios. It's been a while, hasn't it? Apologies, it's been a bit too long. It's about 2 weeks since I've managed to upload anything. There's a number of reasons for that, and we'll get into that in a moment. But if you are here after watching episode 1, or if you have watched episode 1, you're probably thinking, hang on, there's a whole bunch of stuff here that I haven't seen you build. And yeah, that's true, because there's about, I'm going to say 9 to 10 hours of play, work, whatever you want to call it, that pretty much hasn't made it into the video. And there's a number, there's some reasons for that. Mostly actually because a lot of the stuff that I had been building and I had recorded just wasn't that good. And you know, I do this for fun. Like it's not for really any other reason. But I don't like making things that I don't think are good, or at least showing things that I don't think are good. And there's been a lot of build and delete and build and delete and build and delete. So that kind of gets us to where we are now. There is some stuff that I'm quite happy with. Unfortunately, that was the stuff that I didn't get recorded because I think I just forgot. It hadn't quite got to the point that I remembered to click or start the screen capture before I started building, and I got a whole bunch of stuff done that I was actually quite happy with and probably could have done a whole episode on, and then realised that I hadn't recorded any of it. But we'll go through what's new, and we will go through the park in a real-time section so we can see what's there and what's new. But essentially what we're doing now is we're still just working on our entrance for Avalon Studios, which has grown. So we now have, apart from the arch that we built in episode 1 and the beginnings of the building there, we have a studio store, which we'll go through, and just where the ticket gates would be, some guest services, toilets, staff rooms, things like that. What I'm doing just here, or you can see, is I am putting some planters down outside studio number 1. So I did say in episode 1 that I wanted to base a lot of the entrance of this park on Walt Disney Studios in Paris, which is not even objectively, it is definitely the worst Disney park in the world, but there's just something about it that I kind of like. And one of it is this entrance area where you walk through a studio. And it's really Disney, or was Disney's way at the time, of making a cheap main street. You know, don't worry about making full big buildings. Just do a studio, chuck some facades into the studio, and we can do it all cheap. And we don't have to we can make it look like it's supposed to be a film set, and that's why it's a little bit ragged and a little bit not very good. And it's not good, but it has a certain charm to it. And I thought, you know what, actually I want to try and recreate that. So what we got now is the studios, the big studio lots that I downloaded from the workshop. They are from Jonty over at Geekism. He made them for his awesome Geekism Studios park. I will link the workshop link in the description. So if you would like to download them, that will be there. So yeah, we've made this, these 3 big studio, I keep calling them studio lots. I don't know if that's necessarily the correct terminology, but we'll go with it. These big studio lots either side, and it's sort of, to really emphasize that this is a working studio. This is where things are filmed. That build, what we're doing, where we're placing these planters now, that building behind it, that's our studio store. So that is very much based upon the studio store at the entrance at Walt Disney Studios Park in Paris. I'll go through that in the real-time section. This is where our toilets are, this area back here. So I'm just sort of rearranging a lot of the walls there, just so I can add a little bit of this sort of planted decoration in there. You know what? It hasn't been unenjoyable. I don't think I have not enjoyed playing, but just anything that got built, anything that I actually made, besides these entrance buildings, I just couldn't. It didn't give the right feeling. I know that sounds such a weird thing for playing what is essentially just a game. Like, I get that it's a game, but I wanted something a little bit more than I was getting from it, because I wanted it to be that kind of janky but also have that feeling of being like, oh, these are facades in a film studio, and I just couldn't make that happen. And we're gonna jump into the inside of the studio in just a minute, and you'll kind of hopefully see what I mean. But we're just doing some decoration on these buildings out here. I like these doors, but the clear glass sort of makes them a little bit harder to use, so we just chuck some black art shapes behind them, so it just gives the glass an opaque effect. Lighting still is something that I'm really trying to take care of or make an effort with when we're throughout the park. There's a few bits that I haven't managed to get lit yet. The original entrance building that you can see on the right there, that's got some lighting, but the actual exterior of the building isn't lit yet. But everything else, I'm just trying very hard to make sure that this is well lit. The palm trees are uplit, things like that. We'll let this run for a little bit, just while I finish off this outside area, and then we'll get into what's going on the inside when we jump into the studio. Okay, right. So this is the beginnings of the inside of the studio of Studio 1. It's called. It's the main street. And if you have been to Walt Disney Studios in Paris, you'll know that essentially what is inside this studio is just a bunch of flats. So it's not even really it's detailed, but it's detailed because it's just painting on wood. And I think that's the effect that obviously you can't get in Planet Coaster. You can't, if you want detail, it requires detail. It requires you to like I'm doing here, work with these pieces to make as much detail as possible. But then that didn't give off the correct quality, because the quality is supposed to be quite low. And I sort of play around, I think, a bit with just adding like wooden panels to the back to kind of sort of make this kind of idea that this is just wood, like from the back, and the front, what you're seeing is it's paint, or it's just art. But again, I just couldn't get it to really make that to look that different, or look the way I wanted it to look. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep this yet. I've done it, and you'll see sort of, I think I get about 3 buildings done during this during the time lapse, or the fronts of 3 buildings done, and start to put the restaurant, or there's supposed to be like a quick service on the other side, so you walk through the flats or the fronts to get into the quick service restaurant. And I think I get 3 fronts done, and I'm pretty happy with how they look, and I think they'd look really good on a proper main street. I just don't think they look very good for what I'm trying to achieve here. So part of me is thinking about essentially deleting the studio lot from the middle. So delete the studio lot from the middle, and then build a proper main street, like a 19 sort of 50s, 60s, possibly even actually earlier than that, sort of street, Hollywood kind of street. This building, or the buildings that I'm building, are very much, they're copies. They're not inspired by, they're copies of some buildings from the Hollywood Studios in Walt Disney World, Main Street. In there, they have this like opening street that's very Hollywood, in the sort of golden era of Hollywood, and that's kind of what these buildings are. This is exactly actually where those buildings are from. Using some shapes I downloaded off the Theme Makers Toolkit, or some Theme Makers Toolkit shapes I got from the workshop to add sort of smaller detailing, which I quite like. So yeah, that street is definitely the inspiration for the flats on the inside, but the level of detail is so high that it just doesn't fit well together. It's like, is this a crappy, janky, attempt at looking like a studio, or is it a studio? And in which case, this stuff is all far too detailed. I think I might play around with it. I might sort of create a new save of the park, delete the studio lots, and have a look and see what it would look like without the studio there. Make a bit more of a proper main street, and then see how that looks. I kind of don't want to, because this is how I had envisioned the entrance to be the entire time. But at the same time, if it doesn't look any good, then there's no point in keeping it. I also don't want to do it because the lighting of the studio that I've done from the outside looks really good, and I really didn't want to delete that lighting that I've done. The other reason I think actually that it didn't come out all that well, or at least I'm not sure it came out all that well, is because it's kind of like doing an interior. I'm really bad at interiors, and I felt like I'd kind of, I've constrained myself to within this studio lot, so I'm working within a constrained space, and that, I don't know, I always find whenever I do that, or I try and do that, it just doesn't go very well, or at least I can't make it go very well. It doesn't ever really just seem to look how I want it to, and it kind of, I don't know, I get strangely claustrophobic within Planet Coaster as I try and make these interior spaces that I just don't have the space for. Sorry that there's these random long pauses within the time lapse. That's probably me attending to something the dog needs, because I have this tendency of sitting down, and then he has a tendency of being like, oh well, you want to play now? No, I want something. And so it's probably me opening the door to let him go outside, or just playing with him because he will be calm. So I'll sit down and I'll start to play, and he'll be like, now that you're busy, I want all of your attention. So apologies for the long pauses. Just adding a bit more detailing and a bit more size to this building. And again, I think I said it earlier, but I do really like the way this looks. I think it would just look better, much better, as like a properly fleshed out building rather than just a front, because there's some detailing here. I spent quite a bit of time. I think, although there's about 20 minutes of time lapse, I think this is probably about, I don't know, 5 to 6 hours worth of play. I am a very slow builder anyway, so that's possibly not that big a deal, but there's quite a bit of play time in here, and it's because I've really tried to make the effort to detail these buildings. Because of that, I like the way the fronts look. I just don't like them in the setting, I think, of this. The more I'm talking it through, actually, the more I'm gonna try out. I'm very interested in trying out how does this look not in a studio. So I think that's probably what I'll do next, and then I can see how it looks, and then in the next episode we'll either be in a studio and I would be finishing off the street, or we'll be out of a studio and we'll be properly detailing and fleshing out the buildings. The studio lots either side, so we've got Studio 1 here, Studio 2 and 3 either side. So in Walt Disney Studios in Paris, because again this is kind of what that layout is based upon, because they are there in that situation. Those are both theatres, so they have shows going on within those studio lots. Again, something that Planet Coaster's never really given us. I know some people, I've seen people put track rides deep underground so that people will go in the theatre and disappear for a while because they have to walk down hundreds of meters underground and ride a little the cat track ride for 10 minutes and then come back up so it looks like they went in and watched the show. I don't think I'm going to do that. I'm just going to place flat rides within the studio lots, and that's going to be like the opening sort of rides at Universal Studios in Florida, if you've ever been there. So that's Minion Mayhem and Shrek 4D, these kind of simulator film screen rides. They're very lightly themed, if at all, on the outside. They normally have a marquee announcing the ride. Maybe the studio has some kind of paint job or light theming on it, and then from that it's just a simulator inside. And again, Planet Coaster never given us simulators or anything like that, so I'm going to use flat rides that I know I wouldn't use otherwise in the park, like those kind of highly themed or flat rides that are hard to integrate into other areas. I'm going to put them in there and then sort of hide them in there so that, again, it looks like people are going in to experience some other kind of ride, when really it will just be, I think the Dodgems is one that I end up choosing because it's hard to make it look like it's not just in a normal fairground. Just doing some really nice detailing. Actually, this bit was part that I was quite proud of. This is based upon the Five and Dime store at Hollywood Studios in Florida, and it has this really nice sort of detailing in the walls, and these really small, like kind of like art shapes, but they're not the art shapes that came with the game. They are art shapes that I've downloaded from the workshop. Like, they let you do these really nice, intricate designs. Yeah, I don't really know how else to put it. So you then, copying them across, but it creates, like, this is why I kind of am proud of the inside. I just don't like it, but things like this, I think it looks really good, and I spend a lot of time sort of making sure that everything lines up, and that the sort of these bits that I'm doing now, like there is like sort of, these are the same layout but slightly different. So taking the time and effort actually to go through and really look at reference images and make sure that it looks kind of like how we want it to look. It's quite hard because normally when I use references from already existing parks, I use Street View, but for some reason Hollywood Studios is the only Disney park, or the only Walt Disney World park, that isn't Street Viewed. I'm just working off people's photospheres, and that's quite difficult if they haven't, you can't change angle, you can't be like, oh, what does this look like from this side? And then so you end up with these quite a bit harder to figure out what looks good where, but or what looks like it should look more is kind of what I'm trying to say. I'm gonna carry on through this time lapse, and what we'll do once this finishes, we will jump into the park in real time and go through all of this stuff and see what we've built. Okay, and here we are at the entrance of our park, outside our entrance arch, and really not very much has changed here. It's very much, as it was, apart from one thing, which is our new Avalon Studios logo. We'll do a little bit of a zoom in so we can see. So really much more stylized, really simple trick though. It's just, the importing an image, placing it down on the billboard, and then using those really small art shapes that we downloaded from the workshop to create the Art Deco font. Then the studio's writing is from, I think it's called Fogg's Tiny Font. It was on the workshop. It's incredible work. It's made from the Christmas decorations. I think we can see, yeah, there they are there. So the Christmas decorations, that is just like the tops of the baubles. Incredible amount of work. I can't even begin to imagine how long that took. Again, it's in the description below. It must have taken a huge amount of time. Love it. But otherwise, all of this is pretty much the same. We've got our beginning buildings, so our opening buildings over here, which was our sort of guest services and ticketing area. This still needs to be finished, but we've got some decoration up on the upper level. The new font on the above the door there. I was using information kiosks for the desks. I removed 3 of them just to keep one, because it gets ridiculous. You don't need that many. And I found this quite good sort of window, fake window on the workshop. The shutter behind is made from the rail pieces, and then that's just a TV to cover up a sign that was part of the workshop item, which I'll get some more information from. These awesome ticket price signs were made using a billboard creator, which again I'll put in the description, where you just put in what you want and it generates it for you. Ticket prices there taken directly from the costs of Universal Studios Florida. So if you think it's expensive, that's what it costs for a day at Universal Studios. So complain to them. But yeah, a little bit more to do on this building here. I need lighting. I need to finish off a lot of the decoration. Yeah, that one's not quite done. It's got some good bits going all around it. I'm quite happy with how a lot of it looks, but we just need to polish it off more than anything else. Put some signs about tickets and all that kind of stuff. Over here is our studio store, and this I'm quite proud of. Part of it, I found one on the just turned let's turn that back off. There we go. I found, there we go. Selecting everything. I found one on the workshop, which was a park. It wasn't a building, because someone had put a crazy amount of detail into it. So I went on to have a look at what they'd done. I didn't use any of it. I just went in to see sort of, okay, how did you do this and how did you do that? But they had taken some different options on ways to get effects, right? One of the things I'm most proud of is this kind of tile effect here. This was the bit that took me such a long time. Those are really, really, again, small art shapes that I've just placed over the backs of the small castle windows flipped around. It needs some tidying up in places. You can see here that's not quite lined up properly, but that's just very basic stuff that needs to be done. The windows, I'm gonna try and figure out how to put like window displays in there. I don't know if that's something I can download. I'll look for items on the workshop. We've got windows all around, and then through the main entrance here we do have a Just a Memento and a Hat's Fantastic. I think I'm going to delete one of these shops. Neither of them tends to get much throughput anyway, but it was just kind of here so that when we're looking at it from this kind of view, that people are going in is what we're looking for. These amazing Art Deco windows that were on the workshop, they just look really, really great. Yeah, really super happy with how that came out. Quite a bit of effort, but it was definitely worth it. Over here we've got, this is going to be a staff room eventually, so the staff will go in there, but in Walt Disney Studios. It is a like guest services. Again, really kind of like how this came out. At first I was unsure about like the styling of the studio store and this building compared to that building, but actually I kind of figured that it might be a little bit like that. You know, this was a working studio, stylized, isn't necessarily what they were, you know, keeping all of the theming the same isn't necessarily what they would be thinking of. And then when they did start to build the theme park, these buildings that were studio buildings before, they would just be reutilized. So there might be this kind of not quite same theming style, but color palette is what I've tried very hard to keep across all of the buildings. Still a little bit to do in this, you know, the original one, but overall the colors are the same over each building. Some toilets back there. Right, so these are our entrances. This is where the turnstiles would be, and we'll get some of those put in. Through here into Studio 1, we need to work on, there's going to be a door here, just to limit like how people walk through and just to limit this big kind of gaping hole. But then we get into our facade. So we've only done one side of the street. It's quite small, isn't it? This is again what I'm kind of thinking. I'm going to play around with it and we'll find out how I feel in the next episode. We've got some nice sort of swing music to really set a theme in here, and we have like the Hollywood sign as if we're sort of walking towards the stylized Hollywood hills, because once the buildings are on this side you should really just see this walking down the street. But I'm still not sure. I'm not completely sold yet, so we'll see. At the back here, I actually haven't done it yet. I was going to play around with wood, like some wood paneling, but we'll see how that pans out. Basic sort of quick service, which will put tables down, and my thinking was, or it would be kind of like a kind of Planet Hollywood style, like there would be like memorabilia on the walls and stuff, which we would sort out in the next episode. All the pathing from now is kind of temporary. It was just to open up to either side where we've got our first two rides. No marquees or anything yet, but just really simple queuing into just a box with a ride in it. I'm really not going to do any more than that. I'm not going to sort of stylize the insides of these when it's just not really required. Because it's pretending to be something else. It just doesn't make sense to make that or put too much effort into that when really that's just, you're not supposed to look in there. I mean, you might disagree. Drop a comment below if you think that it's not, I should put more effort in. Let me know. But, you know, I think a lot of people would understand what I'm kind of getting at. But what we'll do now is we will end on some nice glamour shots. And there we have it. I do like some of what we've built. I don't like some of what we've built, but I'll have a play and adapt a few things and see what we come up with. I do like this view up towards Studio 1 though. As always, thank you so much for playing along with me today. I hope you have enjoyed it. If you have, don't forget to give the video a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos like this, and follow along with the upcoming Avalon Studios project. Until then though, I will see you when I see you.